The United States makes the UN work when it wants it to work. And that is exactly the way it should be, because the only question to the United States is what's in our national interest.
My name is John, and the International Criminal Court is back in session. It is May 18th, 2025, and we are going to talk about the ongoing war in Ukraine. So, let's start by looking at the situation in Kherson region, or Kherson Oblast. The Russians have reportedly crossed the Dnieper River and have taken the series of islands here. But the problem, though, is we don't really have any sort of confirmation of these claims. And there also really hasn't been a lot of things going on, too, on these islands further down south. And for these reasons, I'm going to have to take all these rumors with a grain of salt. And the fact that Syriac himself, who is the map that you're seeing right now, has not colored any of those in, it leads me to believe that it's either fake news or it's being contested, and that we're not going to know what's going to happen there for the next few days or so. I do bet it's fake, and just a bunch of psyops to demoralize the armed forces of Ukraine. Next up, we got the situation in Zaporozhye region. The Russians have straightened the line. And as you can see, pretty much most, if not all, of the 2023 gains have been reversed here, especially north of Pitagaki and Lepkove. This area is still contested within Kamyansky, but nothing really here has changed too much, though the fields down south of Kamyansky have come under further Russian control once more. But time will tell if the Russians will do anything in this direction this summer or not at all. Now, looking at the situation in southern Donetsk direction, or the former Velika Novosilka direction, the Russians have made some progress. They have captured the village of Vilne Pule, which is just south of the strategic village of Shevchenko, and are currently contesting for the villages of Novopol and Zeline Pule. If both villages were to fall to the Russians, they will be able to not only enter the Zaporozhye region here, further to the west, but they could also start infiltrating the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. I've even heard reports that Russians have also are they're trying to flank Shevchenko, and they're already establishing fire control or FPV drone control over this road that separates Shevchenko and the village of Boksrinsenka, which would put them basically in Dnipropetrovsk region. But other than that, though, that's it for this front. And then going a little further to the east, you got the situation in the former Kharkov direction, which you could arguably now call the Andriivka front, if anything. The Russians have advanced quite far, north from the village of Rozdolne, and are nearing the village of Odrin. Hold on a second, I need to have a moment. Odradny. Yeah, there we go. Odradny. And have also reportedly taken the village of Bagatir. Now, before I go any further, even though Syriac, Divjin, Calibrated, and whoever have all called this village for the Russians, Deep State continues to dispute these claims, along with many pro-UA accounts. They say that the Ukrainians are very much still in control of Bagatir, while the Russian sources, though, say that Bagatir has already fallen to Russia. For now, though, we can assume that Bagatir is under Russian control, but I wouldn't be surprised if the situation is not as simplistic as we want it to appear as, basically, for lack of a better word. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if this news coming out of Bagatir wasn't true, and Deep State is usually reliable, So I'll take their word for it, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's under Russian control right now. They also still have parts of Andriivka and Constantinople as gray zones or contested areas, but again, we're not so sure yet. But one thing for sure is that the Russians now control all these fields here, and they are also trying to battle it out for the village of Oleksivka, which is the last major village before the Dnipropetrovsk region, at least in this direction. And speaking of Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, the Russians have continued their advance, and as I said in like the last video or so, they have taken Troitsky, they have taken Kalirovka, and are currently advancing on the villages of Novomy Kalivka and Muravka. And if the Russians were to take these two villages here, they're basically already in the Dnipropetrovsk region. Though there's reports that Ukrainians are building up a lot of defenses here to prevent the Russians from even entering the province itself because of how big of a PR disaster it would be for President Zelensky, that the Russians have control over some chunk over his home province. I'd be embarrassed too. There's also reports that the village of Horikove is contested and that the Russians have not taken it just yet. But there is reports, however, like reliable reports, that Bogdanovka is under Russian control again. And so all these fields here are pretty much now a pocket, even though you could argue that, I don't know, there's not really a lot of Ukrainians there. If anything, I do think they're here. But also you got to keep in mind of all the FPV drones that are flying over this area here as well. So, yeah, it's going to slow down the Russians for quite some time. But otherwise, though, the situation in the Dnipropetrovsk direction is not looking good for the armed forces of Ukraine. And going a little further to the north, on the outskirts of Pokrovsk, aka Krasnaya Armysk, the Russians have began pushing in this area again. They are advancing in the suburbs of, let's see here, Zhuriove and Leon Torvichi. Yes. And they are also advancing along the TL406 road and have taken this little hill here, or whatever you want to call it, like chalk, and are nearing the outskirts of the residential areas of Pokrovsk. So Russian advance has restarted, but time will tell if they'll be able to do anything here. Now, going a little further to the west, not to the west. We already covered the western direction. It's here. It's actually a miracle that Kotline is still under Russian control despite all the Ukrainian counterattacks. But taking our focus to the east now, things have gone horribly wrong for the armed forces of Ukraine. The village of Malinovka and the village of, Mariliobivka are all, taken by the Russians, which brings them on the brink of cutting off completely Pokrovsk to the eastern direction, even though they've already cut off this road here for a while now. But it's only going to worsen as they get closer to the outskirts of the city of Myonograd. Now, the next villages of the Russians are going to have to take are Myrny, Mykolaievka, and Novoye Konomichny. And there's even reports that Russians will even try to target the villages of Cholny Liman and Rudinsky. Hold on, I can't pronounce these names. Rudinsky. And they have also now taken the village of Nova Poltovka. And have also completely taken the village of Novolenivka. Russians have also captured completely the village of Alexandropol and are currently contesting it for the village of Stara Mykolaievka right now, and are on the outskirts of the village of Zoria. Russians have the village of Henitivka in a cauldron, but they haven't taken it yet. Not yet. Russians are also apparently on the brink of taking the village of Romanivka, but again, nothing has developed there yet. And then going in the Toretsk direction, the Russians have continued to push the Ukrainians back from the city of Toretsk, and they have actually taken more chunks of the northern part of the city, and it appears that once again the Ukrainians are on the brink of losing the entire city of Toretsk to the Russians entirely. Around like 90 or so percent of it is under Russian control, and also Russians have been advancing on the outskirts and these hills here, which will make it easier for the Russians to capture Toretsk sometime either later this month or maybe in June. I mean, one thing is certain, the battle for Toretsk is in its twilight phase, which means, we can expect it to be over very soon. Though obviously not quick enough for the Russians, that is, because they want to obviously do other things other than just trying to capture Toretsk all the time. In the center of Chasiv Yar, the window is closing for the armed forces of Ukraine. They have taken the central Rada building within Chasiv Yar, or whatever is left of it. They have taken, basically this part of the town center and are reportedly advancing across the entire, Kami block section, which is the center part of Chasiv Yar. This battle has taken over 1 full year for the Russians to win. It was a long and grinding battle, but fortunately for Russia, this battle is going to be ending very soon, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see the last of the Ukrainians from the town center, fleeing or surrendering these areas by next month in June, just when summer is about to start. I remember when it was all just it was just like the Canal microdistrict here. This was like the situation in last summer of 2024, but now fast forward to 2025, and obviously the advances are obviously not that big, but there's a reason why Chasiv Yar is very important, and you're going to find out very soon later this year, especially now with the Russian push towards the city of Konstantinovka. You'll see, but time is going to absolutely determine how things will roll within this direction here. But with the taking of Chasiv Yar, with the taking of Toretsk, and this new Russian offensive from the Andriivka area, along from Mayanograd and Pokrovsk, we can expect Konstantinovka to be probably under threat by the near end of 2025, if not taken, that is. Going in Siversk direction, nothing much really going on here, so we'll skip that front. Now, as for the Liman direction, the Russians are currently contesting for the village of Kolodyazy and are also fighting it out for more of these fields here that are just, basically a few inches away from the Kharkiv region. Now, there is around 1 to 2 more villages within the Lugansk Oblast that the Russians have not captured yet, or recaptured in this case. It's Hrikivka and the village of Tiver Libove. And once these two are captured, then you can consider Lugansk Oblast as entirely captured by Russia, again, for the second time during this 3-year conflict. And then it will bring, of course, the Russians back into the Kharkiv region in this direction here, which I'm sure they really want to do very badly because they want to retake the town of Borova if they're going to do any operations against the city of Izium, which is here. But yeah, nothing really going on, though, in the Kharkiv region other than that, though. And this offensive is also, stagnant, along with Volchansk direction, too. Same with Lipsy. Nothing also is really going on too much in the Sumy region, too, even though the Russians did capture the village of Marine. And nothing here in the main Sumy direction. Nothing. So, that's pretty much going to do it for the map updates. Now, before I get going, I want to mention that the Istanbul talks, which took place a few days ago, for the most part, that is, were a complete disaster. Everybody has been cursing at each other, calling each other liars, Nazis, fascists, warmongers, you name it. So yeah, the talks in Istanbul didn't work, and Donald Trump has said himself that the only way he's going to try to end this war is by talking to Vladimir Putin himself in person. Why does he want to meet Trump I mean, not Trump, Putin. Like, why does Trump want to meet Vladimir Putin so badly? It's very simple, my friends. He is looking to avoid complete humiliation and defeat in Ukraine. I don't know what he was thinking by taking ownership of this war. I mean, he's a complete moron for doing that. Because by doing that, he's going to be blamed for whenever Ukraine loses this war. And we know they're losing. And the Russians have also rejected the 30-day ceasefire again, like, I don't know how many times now, because they see this 1-month ceasefire not as a permanent solution, but as a dirty play by Western countries like the United Kingdom, Germany, France, and the rest of the EU, and the United States to rearm and to like resupply in any way to Ukraine, and to also get Ukrainians to fortify their fronts, to increase their manpower once again. They're literally trying to find all sorts of ways to stop the Russians from winning this war, but also try to find some fluky way to win it. Sort of like how we saw with the Idlib ceasefire that took place in 2020. But in my opinion, I don't think Vladimir Putin is that stupid, and unless Russia itself was in a very dire situation, I just don't think he's going to accept any ceasefire proposals by the West and Ukraine. They will not. They do not want a temporary band-aid that you could just peel off at any time. They want a permanent solution. So anyway, folks, that's going to do it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it and found it informative as well. And I will see you all next time. I hope all of you have a great day, and peace out. Goodbye.